Jana Bates says, what do you think is the percentage of effort spent trying to prevent new trans people versus attack those who've already transitioned? Do you have a thought?
Why don't you go first?
Okay. I guess that there are some, it's different for all gender critical people. In like overall in the movement, I guess they'll take whatever they can at the moment. So if there's something happening in court about one of those things, they'll all be on it, and then as soon as something else happens, they'll be on it. There are some people who are very focused on one or the other. You'll see lots of these ROGD parents who like they have a trans kid, and that is their entire life is trying to detransition this child, and they'll come up with all this, they'll buy into the rest of the conspiracy, but they're really focused on their child because it personally affects them. And then also, there are some people who maybe have had a bad experience with a trans adult, or perhaps they're a divorced partner of one, and so they're very focused on like the adult thing, and the kids thing is just something to back up their argument. So I think it's kind of different for every person, but on the whole, it's about half and half, I think.
Yeah, I like maybe a large amount of the political energy and like the actual political things that they are trying to change that are directly related to their concerns are focused on young trans people. But it's hard for me because I think like easily what I find the most distressing in this is gender critical people reporting that they have convinced a young trans person's parents not to let their child transition. And it's just horrible.
Or even convincing a young trans person to detransition or to stop trans. Like I've met quite a few of them who have gone through this. Quite a few like ex-gender critical people said there was a lot of pressure for them to detransition. I know a few who did detransition as part of their like little gender critical phase. And it's very horrible.
Yeah, I specifically mentioned this last week, but Kira Bell, who's at the center of the puberty blockers case, though her transition was later, but she said that she was inspired to detransition by Posey Parker. Which is quite depressing.
It is quite depressing. I think if I very much support detransitioners. I think it's very important too, and they kind of have an even worse time with healthcare than trans people do, which is just horrific because they often need some of the same services, and there needs to be more resources for detransition people and stuff. And I do know some detransitioners who thought they were trans and realized, I guess, that they weren't. And that's important. But that's very different to saying, like, I was inspired to detransition. Like, you shouldn't be inspired to transition or detransition. You should, like, you could be inspired to find out, like, yourself and investigate, and you can be inspired to, like, act on it, I guess. But, yeah, like, it just makes it feel like a political move, which... There are political detransitioners, and I would be surprised if any of them stay detransitioned, because no one should transition or detransition for political reasons. It's going to ruin their life, and you can't like wish the trans away. Like just like ex-gay people, you can't pray the gay away. Just doesn't. That's just not how humans work.
And with Kira Bell, she once as Posey Parker having, not personally, but Posey Parker's media presence, having convinced her that she couldn't be a man, wasn't a real man. Just kind of this like cutting off of possibilities for people's lives. It's just it's so sad.
Yeah, it's quite sad. But, Kira Bell could be a political detransitioner, or she could be a detransitioner who wasn't trans, or who transition didn't work out for her. And if that's the case, good for her, and I hope she stays detransitioned if that's what's right for her, and I hope that she can live a happy life as a detrans person, even if I think that politically we're like hardline polar opposed on everything, including women's spaces where she's just chosen to use men's spaces to not offend women. I think I also strongly disagree with that. But, you know, I still want the best for all detrans people. But political detrans people, I hope that they snap out of it because it's not going to last. Not if politics is your reason, it's not going to last.